Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. The show is brought to you by The Wellness Paradigm, a holistic health coaching company shifting the way that women understand and heal their bodies. Through bioenergetic testing, functional lab testing, and functional nutrition, we uncover what traditional approaches often overlook, so you can stop guessing, start healing, and finally feel like yourself again. No more one-size-fits-all approach, just real answers, deep-rooted healing, and the clarity and confidence you deserve to feel incredible. It's time to shift the paradigm of women's health. Now, on to our show. Hello, Danielle. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. How are you doing today?
Man, I am great. We got to chatting a little bit before, and I love the story that Danielle's going to share. And I'll briefly introduce her and let her kind of take the floor. But Danielle is an advocate for individuals with hidden disabilities, inspired by her own journey through mold exposure and chronic health challenges. She's also a senior corporate paralegal, so she blends personal resilience with professional expertise, which is amazing, to help others take pride in their differences, advocate for themselves, and redefine what it means to be unstoppable. Danielle, I'd love for you to elaborate on this and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Shannon. I really appreciate it. So just to kind of give a little background, yes, I have a hidden disability since probably about second grade. I had a auditory processing disorder that was diagnosed. So I continued through my journey of school. Didn't really present itself until probably about sixth grade. And then at that point, I needed to have a tutor come in 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. The turning point for me, though, with that hidden disability was my sophomore year in high school. I literally got called to the principal's office. And I'm sitting there in class, and they said, Danielle Brzusek, come to the principal's office. I'm walking down the hallway going, what did I do? I didn't do anything. And I walk in, my mom's there. And I went ahead and said hello. And the principal said, basically, your daughter will be lucky if she graduates high school.
Hmm.
At that point, I felt like somebody had just, really stung me. I was like, whoa, what? Huh? I've been working so hard. So for me at that time, this was before we had all the plans for people that do have hidden disabilities or any kind of a disability in school. Now they do an amazing job at having plans and having them get help, whether it's that they need to be in a separate classroom for taking tests or, anything along those lines. So back then, I would take multiple choice tests. I would study for hours and hours. I would sit there and tell my tutor everything inside out about what the subject was, to only go into the classroom, take a multiple choice test, and get a C, D, or F every single time. Because my brain just didn't process the way that format was. So back then I would advocate for myself. I would tell them that I need oral tests. I would tell them that I need essay tests. Some teachers were accommodating, some teachers weren't. So I left that principal's office that day and I could make two choices. One, believe her limiting belief and, spiral down. Or two, kind of add fuel to the fire in my belly and just say, no way. I am going to graduate high school. I'm going to college, and I'm going to continue forward. And so when I left that day, that's what I chose. I chose to dig deep and to go ahead and graduate from high school. Didn't know how, didn't know what, didn't know where. So from then I came back, and my parents are amazing people. My mom would be like, well, there's alternative schools, always trying to find a solution, which is incredible. And she started talking to people. I started researching, and we came across a school in Boston, Massachusetts. That's called Landmark School. And so my mom and I packed up our bags and we went and visited the school. And as soon as I stepped ground on the school, I told the headmaster like 10 minutes into it, okay, sign me up. I'm here. Because I knew that was the place that I had to go. This school is specifically for people that have learning disabilities, ADHD, ADD, and they're small classes, and they break down and basically provide you with skills that you would need for your specific hidden disability, and then things that you can take all the way into your life. So what I did is I just I couldn't go, obviously, at that point. They didn't have any openings. So
Oh.
I had to wait till January of my junior year. So this was like September. And so packed up our bags, came back, had a long conversation with my parents, was very fortunate that my parents had the money, because it was probably as expensive as going to college, if not more.
Yeah.
Packed up my bags, went 3,000 miles, came out to be an honor student. I had
Oh.
A's and B's, and graduated. So, but I
Good.
didn't stop there. I kept going forward. Graduated from college, got my recreation degree at Western Washington University, and didn't stop there. Continued on and got my paralegal certificate at the University of Washington, and then landed in my current job about 6.5 years ago as a senior corporate paralegal.
Wow. So what, besides telling yourself like I'm going to do this, did you have any tools or anything specifically, or mainly just like the fire and the drive to just not let that limit you?
So I've been thinking a lot about that because people have
Yeah.
been asking me,
Of course.
and I would actually say that it was my sports. Since I was very young, I was a top performer in soccer, tennis, skiing. And so for me, when I hit sixth grade and school started to become very difficult for me, I kept trying to kind of focus more on where I was successful. I was I was fortunate that, even though I wasn't as successful in school because of the way the tests were and the way my brain processed it, I was really successful as a goalkeeper, for soccer, as a tennis player. And, when you're in that mindset, in that zone, I call it a zone. So like I remember being a goalkeeper, and I didn't care about anyone else on the field. All I care about was that ball was not going to get past me and in the goal. And so that was my zone the whole time that I was on the, field. And so I remember that day, it was the same kind of thing where I immediately kind of got back into that mindset zone and was like, no way, no one is going to tell me what I cannot do. And so that, I think having that kind of transpired over into school. And so for me, that was my mindset.
Yeah, I love that little analogy. For people that might be dealing with, a hidden disability, a learning disorder, anything like that, what would you kind of tell them as maybe, one or two words of advice if somebody's maybe struggling a little bit?
I would say if they're struggling, don't give up. Go find, resources that can help you to continue forward. For example, for me, finding that essay tests or oral tests, I was successful in. I just couldn't, my brain couldn't process the way that multiple choice tests were. So don't give up. Try to keep moving forward and finding what works for you, and understand that it may not be the norm, but understand what your condition is, to a point that you can tell somebody, this is what I need for accommodations. Today in the workforce, I still have resources for myself. I'm not a good writer. That's just part of my auditory processing disorder. So I have Grammarly on my computer. So when I go and write to, the CEO or my general counsel, that I don't look like I'm writing like sixth grade, and that it's more concise.
Hmm.
Because verbally I can concise, but written, I can just write forever and repeat myself. And so I've even used resources today in my work environment.
Nice. Um, I know you and I were talking before about kind of you unpacked this a little bit, then you were hit with another chronic health condition
Mm.
with mold exposure. And so I'd love to kind of dive into that a little bit, how that changed you, how that I feel like made you a bigger advocate. So yeah.
Yeah, so probably about 4.5 years ago, we were in a home, and unbeknownst to me, there was mold. My body just kept tanking. And what I mean by that is I would wake up and I'd be so exhausted. Almost kind of like I had mono, but I didn't.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden my brain was so foggy, and things that I would be knowing inside and out at work, I would get to my computer and I'd be like, what was I about to do? And I mean, just weird things like that were happening, and like all of a sudden wet rugs in my house and different things like that. And I couldn't figure out, I just knew in my gut there was something not right in the home, because as soon as I would leave the home, I would perk up a little bit. And then I'd go back in and I would tank. So we did finally find, through research and about 6 months of going through this, that there was mold. And then at that point, I remember going to the ER and saying, I think I had mold exposure, and, I wasn't breathing right and all this stuff. And, modern medicine, is phenomenal. But I think that because this was hidden, they couldn't see it. There wasn't anything. I just knew I started having gut issues. I started being bloated. I started getting migraines. I started getting all these things that just didn't add up. And then, to have like an antihistamine, here you go, you're allergic to something. So I just kept persevering. So, and I think because I persevered when I was younger, and that, after that sophomore year in high school, I just kept persevering, and I kept looking, and I kept trying to figure out, and I kept researching, and I kept talking to people, and, going to alternative doctors to find out, is there anything in my blood work? So I just kept moving forward. And I would say that would be my second piece of advice, is just keep moving forward. If you have a gut feeling, you can't understand exactly what the hidden disability is, whether it's PTSD, depression, ADHD, a learning disability, whatever, mold exposure, just keep moving forward, because every person you talk to will lead you to another source.
I really can't shout that enough, because if you know something's wrong, you might get gaslit or, I know that's used a lot, but dismissed a little bit doesn't mean to stop. And it might mean that even a functional, you might go to one person and they still can't figure out what's wrong. That's okay. Go find something else. There's something out there to help you figure out what it is, whether it's traditional medicine, whether it's, functional medicine, whether it's bioenergetic testing like we do, there is something that's going to help you figure it out, because, we are, especially women, I feel like we're very intuitive, and we're kind of shut that down a little. We know when things are off, So I love that you're kind of an advocate for other people, and yourself. Have you walked other people through this process of being more of, a health advocate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I started working with one of my good friends, her daughter. She has a learning disability. And so she was struggling about junior year in high school. And so I started going over there and started kind of helping her break down some of the tools that I was taught at my at Landmark School, but then also kind of on the mindset side, because a lot of us, will sit there and we'll hit a roadblock, and then we're kind of our own worst enemies, where we'll spiral down and we'll kind of go. It's just natural human being thought process, right? And you'll just kind of spiral down. And so I would go over there and we would talk, and I would kind of coach her, and she would kind of be like, oh my God, I failed another test. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see. Did you talk to the teacher? Did you ask for accommodations? No, I don't feel comfortable. Okay, well then let's get through that part so you can feel comfortable to go there and, ask. And so we would just kind of keep talking it through, and I would let her know what tools that I use and how I changed my thought process. I actually have a checklist that I work with people that kind of talk about be determined and kind of turn around, and how to kind of change it one piece at a time. And to a big thing is confidence. Confidence is a huge thing. I had sports to help me transfer the confidence that I had with sports into school. But there was a lot of days I struggled. I would come home and I would cry. I would be deflated because I got a D on my test, and the girl next to me or the person next to me, the guy, girl, whoever was next to me, studied 5 minutes before the test and got an A. So I definitely had those ups and downs, but every time I had the down, I just remembered, where was my goal? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? So
Yeah,
I work with people to kind of help them figure that out.
I love that. And the confidence piece is huge. I feel like that's also really hard when you're, in middle school or high school, just that really vulnerable age where it's really uncomfortable to speak up.
Mhm.
You don't want to, what are they going to think of me? I feel like there's a whole nother like psychological layer to that too.
Mhm.
I know when I had introduced you, I had mentioned, becoming unstoppable, I think was kind of a big phrase. Um,
Mhm.
I'd love to know a little bit on like what that really means to you, especially after kind of overcoming everything.
Yeah. Unstoppable means to me just keep moving forward. Every single baby step. With the mold, I didn't just and, sit there and be like, okay, yeah, there's nothing wrong with me, even though I felt like garbage. I just kept researching, kept talking, kept finding out, kept trying to figure out, because in the home, there was no signs of mold. There wasn't mold, normally on, the wall. There wasn't like a roof leak,
Mhm.
bubble or something where you would have it where, the room meets the roof line. There wasn't any of that. So it was hidden, just kind of like the hidden disability and the mold in my body. It was hidden. And so I really had to investigate and really go. And unstoppable to me means you don't let anything stop. You don't let anything limit you. You may have a thought process that limits you, but you break through it and you keep moving forward. And I love the analogy of baby steps, because some days you can do a mile. The next day, you may only be able to do one step.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that too. Um, if you could give like your favorite piece of advice, kind of wrapping it up, if somebody, maybe something that's stuck with you, that's helped you carry on, or something that has really hit home for people you work with, like what would that be?
For me, what really got me out of the funk is I had this amazing dog named Woodby. And so for me, I have now realized over the years that my emotional support is animals, and I had dogs of my own for 13 and a half years. So fine for me, when I had those bad days, I would go home and literally curl up with the dog, and the dog would be smiling at me and happy. And then, 20 minutes later or an hour later, I'd be out in the backyard playing with the dog. So find something that can help you get out of that funk. Fill your cup is what I call. Fill your emotional cup. whether it's you're volunteering because you had a bad day at work, or you had, a challenge come up and you still like, a medical challenge, and you know that you're not feeling well, but you're in and out of the hospital and you're not sure what's going on. Find something. Knitting, some people do knitting, some people write books. Find something that can balance the challenge that you're having, whatever it is, with filling your cup, and then try to find and just keep moving forward, keep persevering, keep locating whatever resource that you need for your hidden disability.
I love that. Thank you so much for all of this beautiful insight. If people wanted to connect with you, find you, can you please let us know where?
So my website is www.danielledoeshealth.com. And my email is danibrz23@gmail.com. And I would love to set up any phone call and have discussions. I'm out there to help support. I wanted people to feel comfortable and know that your hidden disability does not define you. It's just a roadblock.
Yeah. And just figuring out the tools and resources to help you. That's what you're there for.
And to be unstoppable.
Be unstoppable. I love that. I love that. Danielle, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And I will put her website and contact info in the show notes. So you guys have that, and we will see you on the next show.
Thank you, Shannon. Have a wonderful day.
You too.